Yeah, it's a little terrifying. As I mentioned in the talk, I think in particular with my focus on predatory publishing, I think that it does have the capacity to threaten science. All of this fake news, people are finding it hard to be able to trust science, and it is, of course, supposed to be the one avenue that's trustworthy. I think there is a way for us to retrieve our credibility. I think that several of the things that I mentioned in the talk about how we can try to de-incentivize publishing in predatory journals. Lots of universities are going this way, using whitelists to weigh the quality of papers when they're trying to decide whether somebody should have tenure or granting. So I think this is, for example, one step in the right direction. Unfortunately, I think the lay public, as we refer to them, is maybe losing a little bit of trust in science, and I think that as the experts, it is our responsibility to determine what is credible and what is not credible. Because at the same time, people need to think for themselves, and scientists also have sometimes poor motivations to deceive and to be fraudulent. The motivation was an annoyingly massive amount of spam emails from predatory journals asking us to, so we did the study with my colleagues and I at the University of Wrocław. Only one of us really is interested in, from a research perspective, in scholarly publishing. That's his area of expertise, but the rest of us study mostly human behavior. But we were all receiving massive amounts of spam emails from predatory journals, and then noticing the increase in emails, in particular asking us to act as editors on boards of journals completely outside of our areas of expertise. And obviously this is a big issue because editors play such a key role in the entire process. I mean, speaking about credibility of science, the editor is really the one who decides whether a paper is reviewed and by whom, and whether it's accepted or not. So we decided that this is something we really want to pursue, and in a systematic way. So it was my colleague Piotr Sadokowski's idea to create an Szust, and interestingly, Szust means a fraud in Polish, but nobody got onto this apparently, or at least not the journals who did ultimately accept her. So the way we went about it is created this fictitious scientist, Anna Szust. She was affiliated with the university in Poland that one of the co-authors works at. And we essentially created a fictitious profile for her. So she had a fictitious site on the university. We created a CV for her. The chapters on the CV were mostly from our theses and things like this, papers we wrote in university. But other than this, she didn't exist beyond the CV and this fictitious website at that point. And the procedure of the paper was to send this CV and a cover letter from the Dr. Fraud, as she's now become colloquially known, to journals from 3 different well-known directories. So this included journals that at the time were on Jeffrey Beall's list of predatory journals, probable predatory journals. There were 120 from the DOAJ, so this is a whitelist of open access journals, and then 120 from the JCR, which are journals with an impact factor. So we basically emailed these journals, the CV and the cover letter, asking if we can be editors, if Anna Szust can be an editor on their boards. And for 6 months, we tracked their responses. It's getting worse and worse. There are more. These are estimates because it's quite difficult, as I said, to track these sorts of entities, because maybe calling them journals is also an exaggeration, as some of them don't actually produce any sort of science. But it's an increasing problem, so now there are more likely more predatory journals than legitimate journals. I've had this discussion with several of my colleagues about who to point the finger at, and when I talk about this research about predatory journals, I often frame it in a way to help people recognize a predatory journal so that they can avoid accidentally publishing a paper in this journal or accidentally acting on the editorial boards. But in discussions with colleagues, I've had many people say, I don't think it's an accident. Oftentimes, I think with the pressure to publish or perish, more and more students are doing this knowingly. And I think it depends on the country. And I'm curious what your perspective is as PhD students, whether you think that some people are doing this knowingly.